All right, so welcome to the first Journey Through the Generations podcast. My name is Philip, and I'm here with my wife.
Hi, I'm Trisha.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy. This is our first episode, and we're excited about it. And so, our goal for the podcast is really to tell the story of how Trisha has been able to navigate through her own genealogy journey over the years, and Trisha will give you some tips and tricks to help you along your journey. And finally, what we really hope is that something inspires you to either start or continue and pick back up your research of your family. Right.
Right.
Right. So, did you want to say something before we moved on?
No, not really.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. And the way we'll do this, and it may not happen like this every time, but I'm just gonna go through some questions with Trisha, and she can tell us a little bit about her own journey. So, first question is probably the one that makes the most sense, right? What made you want to get started researching your family tree?
That's actually a hard question. I originally kind of started researching my family when I was in college. I was a health science major, and one of my assignments was to do a family tree, but health related. So I had to do a family tree and do all the health related illnesses that impacted as many generations as I could go back.
Right.
And that's how it really started for me, because I actually had to call my mom and dad at the time to see, because at that time all of my grandparents were deceased. What they died from, if they had any other illnesses or diseases while they were alive. So that's kind of how it started. And then I had my son, our son, and we were at my father's house in Newport, where I'm from, going through old pictures. That's just something that we always do when we go home, look at old pictures. And Wesley was probably 5 or 6 at the time, and he asked me who these people were in the pictures. And like kids do, he had 5,000 questions about everybody in these pictures, and I did not know anything about these people. And he said, well, this is your family. Why don't you know who they are and what they like? And so I was like, it's a good question. Maybe I should get to know the people in my family a little bit better. And so that's kind of how it really evolved.
Cool. So, and when did you start, and aside from the medical kind of research that you did, when did you start, really researching, from a genealogy standpoint?
I really started probably in 2010. That's the first time I went on Ancestry. And I built a little tree, and I did not have a lot of information at the time, and I was frustrated, and I just didn't do anything after that.
So about 7 years you've been working on this off and on.
Yes.
So over the years, what would you say is the biggest barrier you've faced while doing your research?
I would say, honestly, myself.
What do you mean by that?
I can be my own worst enemy at times, because I read tons and tons of books on how to research, and all of the books say the same thing. Start with yourself and talk to your oldest living relatives, which for me would be my parents. And I did not do that. I didn't do that until just last year, and I've been researching for 7 years. So the fact that I thought that I could do this on my own without getting any help from anybody has been, because I could be a lot further along if I had actually sat down and had conversations with them like I should have in the beginning.
But what do you think that people who are listening to this, what kind of barriers do you think they would run into as they start working, their family tree? What kind of roadblocks can they expect as they start to, work through their tree?
I think one would be because there's so much online right now that you think that you don't have to go to a library or a research center. You think you can do it all online, and that is not going to give you all the information that you could get from actually going into the library, looking at the microfilm, talking to the genealogists in the library and research centers. They are a great help, and that's something that I didn't utilize until very recently myself.
I would imagine that considering that slavery wasn't all that long ago, and knowing what we know about slavery, I would imagine that once a person gets to that, records is going to be difficult because you can't just go to your state Department of Health and say, hey, I need the birth certificate of X person when they were enslaved, whenever it was.
Right.
It's not that simple like today.
Right.
So
and
I would imagine that's a huge barrier for people because it's just not, sometimes it's just not
it is.
a lot of information
I'm glad you
out
brought
there.
that up because I, as a family historian and a lover of history, especially Black history, I just assume people know that once you get to 1965 and you're trying to go back further and you have African descent, I just assume you know that, and that's an assumption that I should not make. But yes, records are very hard to find for Black people, but honestly anybody, because the Civil War, they burned down courthouses, hospitals. There are very few areas that there were battles in that they didn't burn down major buildings. So that is an obstacle for not only Black people to get through, but anybody who has ancestors in the South.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on from that. So let's talk about your family.
Okay.
What do they think of your research, and what were their thoughts before you started? What are their thoughts now? Kind of how are they feeling?
This is another, I never really talked about my journey, what I was doing, or anything until recently. My mother is all about it. She's very excited. She talks about it all the time. She wants to, help find whatever she can to help me out. But I don't want to say my father's not excited about it. I just think he's indifferent. He's a quiet-natured person anyway, and he's very private, so he hasn't really... He says that he knows this is something that I want to do and that makes me happy, so he's okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't gone out of his way to assist me or anything like that.
And I would imagine that that's probably the case in a lot of families where there are, Black folks, sometimes we don't talk about stuff.
Right.
We don't talk about, our past, especially if there was something that happened in the family that was bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or if there was someone, that got into big trouble,
right,
or something like that. That stuff didn't get talked about, and then so we get to 3, 4, 5 generations later, and you're trying to find out everybody's passed on. Mm-hmm. You can't,
it's hard.
You don't find out information. So,
right.
So what about, you talked about your parents? What about your siblings? What are their feelings about what you're doing, and then maybe talk about some of your extended family and what their thoughts.
I have a brother and a sister. My sister she's on board. She'll do what she can to help. She doesn't want to go to the library or anything and look at microfilm, but she supports me in any other way that she can. She's all about it. My brother, he's kind of like my dad. He's indifferent about it. He knows this is what I'm doing. He knows that when I'm in Little Rock, I spend a lot of time in libraries and research centers and things like that. But he hasn't really voiced positive or negative feedback. He just knows this is just something that I'm doing. As for extended family, I have family that has been, more than gracious to help me out with records and photos and get me stories that I can tie together with the facts that I have from my research. And then there are other relatives that know this is what I'm doing. They're not really interested in helping. They're indifferent about it. It goes both ways.
I think you have to expect that. Not everyone is passionate about history or their family,
right,
or research, and that's okay.
Yeah, and
it's
history,
just not everybody is like that.
Right, and history is its own little special entity. Either you love it or you hate it. And especially when you get to talking about who owned us when we were slaves, there are people that just don't want to talk about that.
Okay, so what is the most exciting find that you've had during your research that made you get up and do the happy dance or yell in the library when you're supposed to be quiet?
I did actually yell in the library.
I know.
This one. I found my 3 times great grandfather on my mother's side, his emancipation papers in the Arkansas True Democrat from 1862. And yes, I did scream in the library, and both my mother and Wesley, our son, was with us, and they looked at me like, why are you screaming in the library? But I was excited because, I've seen that on TV. I've read books about slavery and emancipations and freedom papers, and I've seen documentaries all the time about the Underground Railroad and slavery, and to see it with a name that I know was very powerful.
Yeah, you don't find that stuff a lot, sometimes because, like you said, things happen, documents get lost, they get burned in fires, right, and or destroyed in some kind of way, or they get into some kind of library or museum, but no one knows what it is, or
it doesn't actually have a name associated with it.
Yeah, so that's cool. What's your goal? What are you trying to do with this? Is it just a hobby, or are you really trying to do something with this information that you're finding?
My ultimate goal is to publish my research findings. I want to have a book that also tells the story of my family and how I reached where I got in my research. Like, how I went to the archives, or how I use online, or what books I use, references, to be able to assist me in getting the actual documents and records of my family.
Cool. So understanding that there may be some people listening to this podcast who have thought about doing this, doing their family tree, or have done it and have grown frustrated with, finding information or lack of finding information. What one or two tips would you give someone who is interested in doing it, but they really don't know where to start, or they've kind of got stuck?
My first tip would be to go to a genealogy workshop or a conference. Most major cities have them 2 times a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. You will be able to hear somebody who's a professional, and you will be around other genealogists and family historians that will encourage you, that you can network with, that will ultimately inspire you and give you ideas on how to find what you're looking for, because there will be anywhere from 50 to 100 people. There's going to be at least one person there at a stage where you are or have been, that will be able to help you get through it. So I would definitely recommend that. And a lot of them you can go through your local libraries. A lot of them, if they're local, they don't cost very much, or they may be even free. Because that was a concern of mine, that in the beginning I didn't want to spend a lot of money on this because I didn't know where I was going with this. I wanted it to be as inexpensive as possible. So, but you go to your local library, or if you're by a university, their library usually has really good information about genealogy or special collections and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not researching my family tree, but because I've been a part of you working on yours, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In some ways, I just stay out the way. It's not my cup of tea. But I get excited more about the technology part,
Right.
and helping. But I would say somebody, who's just getting started, like you said earlier, start with yourself and work your way, through it back. And I would say just do as much online as you possibly can. Get request, birth certificates, and a lot of that stuff can be found online. You don't have to go anywhere, and that'll help kind of build your confidence up as you work through your tree. And of course, you're going to get to a point to where you're not going to find anything online, but use Google. Google will be your best friend. You can find anything, and you just have to keep looking. You can't click on the first 2 or 3 things that pop up. You have to work your way through it. And I would say also is like, I think I've told you this before because I've seen you get frustrated, and I think you work on too much at a time.
Yeah.
Like, your family is going to get significantly bigger.
Yes.
As you work. And I think if you try to take on all of it at once, you're going to get frustrated because you're not going to find information all at once.
Right.
So pick a side, and focus on that for a while. And if you get to a stopping place or a place where you have to travel somewhere but you can't go, till months later, work on the other side of the family a little bit and work on one person or whatever. Just break it down in smaller chunks and you'll wind up getting less frustrated, I think.
You're absolutely right. Because my thing is, when I find a new search engine or I find a new tool, then you put everybody's name in that's on my tree or that is associated with my tree. And I have a really bad habit of doing that, and I know better than that. But I'm just so excited that I want to see what I can find on everybody. So yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, and just know that you're not gonna find everything right off the bat. It's gonna take a while to get, especially the further back you go,
right,
where records start to be a little less common, and it's hard to find some stuff. And then we didn't do this, but you can always, I've seen this before, just working on your stuff, is you can always pay somebody to, if you got the money like that,
right,
and you can always pay a expert to do it, and it's expensive if you get a good one.
Yeah.
And you pay them, by an hour or however long.
Yeah.
And that's great. If you got money, maybe that's the way you do it too. So whatever helps get the information. And then I'll say one more thing, and I'll quit because it's a whole bunch of tips, and we'll save some for future podcasts. But I would say too, when we did this, watch all of those TV shows that come on TV, come on PBS or
TLC.
TLC. It's what's the one? Finding Your Roots and Genealogy Roadshow.
Right.
Those come on. Man, watch all of those because that stuff may not be in the same area where you live, or where your family may be, but the tools they use may be beneficial to you to help.
Yes. So, I have learned a lot because they kind of go behind the scenes to show you. Well, we went to the state archives and found tax records on. Because I would have never thought to look at tax records until I was looking for slavery records. But you can use tax records to after slavery because poll taxes, if they registered to vote right after the Civil War, they had to pay a poll tax. So yes, I watch those and I take notes.
Yeah, and the celebrity ones, you might not learn as much, but I just like the celebrity ones.
Yeah, it's very interesting
just to see,
to see how they put it together to get them all this information.
Yeah. So.
And my family's not from Spain, but I watch those when they go over to Spain and look at all the old records because European people, they have like the best records from all the way back.
Yeah.
Back. So they can go way back.
Some of those folks didn't have to deal with the kind of issues that we did in our years.
Yes,
so.
And sometimes I give them the side eye because they can go back to the 1200s.
So it's real easy for them because all their records is in some old church,
Correct.
And they can go down there and just put on some white gloves and go down there and start looking at stuff.
Yes.
We can't do that.
No, they get the side eye sometimes from me.
Yeah. But. So anyway. All right, so I think that's a good start, don't you think?
I think that was great.
Our first one.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. You can subscribe to the podcast through Bumpers, through the Bumpers app. You can download the Bumpers app on your phone. I think you can sign up online as well. So we ask that you do that, and we'll continue to do this. And often, we don't know how often, kind of as as time permits, I guess. We get a little busy around here sometimes. But anyway, and we're also going to try to put this on iTunes as well. So we're going to try that. So hopefully you can go and subscribe there. And then, Trisha, you tell them about your blog.
Yes, I recently started a blog, Journey Through the Generations.wordpress.com. And it's just basically me writing about where I've been in this journey, the libraries I've been to, the road trips I've taken, some of the cool documents that I've found along the way in preparation to help me write my book.
Yeah. So, go in there and leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the podcast, if there are some things that you want us to talk about next time, any questions, just let us know, and we look forward to talking to you guys again soon, and maybe we'll introduce Wesley to everyone next time.
Maybe he's been on a couple trips to the library with me.
Yeah.
He may have some insight from a child's perspective.
Yeah, so that'll be cool. So we'll do that. All right, thanks y'all.
Thank you.